Welcome to Sci-Fi Quantum Archives. Don't forget to like, subscribe and explore. She sat in the third row, close to the window with the chipped frame and the rust-locked latch that hadn't moved in 4 winters. Dust clung to her sleeves. Crayons scattered across the linoleum floor when her elbow bumped the edge of the table. No one noticed. The room hummed with idle voices, the kind that barely meant anything, just sounds passed between bored mouth. Outside, sunlight pooled in the weeds growing through the fence. Paper waited under her wrist, blank, untouched. Other children had already drawn their rockets and bright suns with smiling faces, their colored planets in neat textbook order. Hers stayed empty. She didn't look up when the teacher gave instructions again. Didn't speak. One blue crayon rolled slowly between her fingers, leaving a faint waxy smudge on her palm. Then she moved. No hesitation. The shapes curved fast. 7 circles, none equidistant, none spaced in any way that mirrored classroom charts. One ellipse arched so sharply it nearly broke from the page. A second orbited at a slant, cutting across another's path like it didn't belong in the same system. No names. No labels. Just lines, one after the next, her face blank the entire time. By the time pencils dropped and chairs scraped back, hers was still unfinished. She kept shading until the bell rang, pressing harder, adding faint rings around a jagged sphere, a haze around another. One had a storm, colored violet. The teacher passed by once, twice, then stopped. Eyes narrowed, trying to understand what exactly she was trying to draw. None of it matched the curriculum sheet. No arrangement made sense. Fingertips left faint dents where she gripped the edges of the page. Breath quiet, almost invisible. When asked where it came from, her answer was a whisper. Not hesitant, detached. Saw it, she said, while sleeping. Not imagined. Not dreamed up. Saw. The drawing went on the board beside the others, tacked above a fire exit chart no one ever read. No comment, no praise, no reprimand. It stayed there for 6 weeks. Then the semester ended and the walls were cleared. She didn't take it home. No one asked. The paper slipped into a folder marked Projects, Spring, and dropped into a filing cabinet next to old permission slips and broken pencil sharpeners. At recess, she sat alone, never looked up when others passed. Teachers chalked it up to quietness, maybe nerve. But the janitor, sweeping past the art room one evening, swore he heard her speaking once. Not to him. Not to anyone in the room. Just soft, muttering sounds in a rhythm he didn't recognize. Not English. Not anything he knew. He never mentioned it again. The school repainted its corridors 3 summers later. Beige over beige, the kind that hides handprints and forgets names. During cleanup, cabinets were emptied into bins. Old worksheets, faded posters, leftover glue sticks hardened in place. One of the student aides paused when she pulled out a folder marked Spring Projects. Dust lifted as she flipped through it, pages crinkling like dry leaves. Bright rockets, smiling planets, cheerful astronauts. Near the back, something darker. Smudged with crayon, edges bent inward. No label, no name written on the front. She stared at it for a moment, looked at the orbits too close together, the strange lean of the outermost planet, then set it aside without a word. It fell between stacks of holiday crafts and was never logged. Middle school blurred under fluorescent light and loose schedules. Morning announcements, silent lunches, notebooks with unfinished assignments. She answered only when called. Math was passable, writing reluctant, science avoided. During astronomy week, her hands stayed folded. No projects submitted. No eye contact made. At home, walls thinned over time. Sound carried more clearly. Bathroom fans, hallway footsteps, static from old radios that never seemed to work quite right. Blank notebooks began appearing under her mattress. Her mother found one open on the kitchen floor, symbols scrawled across both pages, drawn with a ruler's edge but slanted like they'd shifted while she worked. No explanation. Just silence. The dog refused to sleep in her room after that year. Barked at closed doors. Scratched at the corner of the hallway without reason. Lights flicked out twice during windless nights. Once, the refrigerator door stood open in the morning, untouched and humming. Sleep became restless. Sheets twisted in knots. Faint lines of red near the nostrils some mornings, wiped away quickly with the back of her sleeve. She stopped remembering her dreams, or said she did. Wouldn't talk about the drawings. Didn't look at the stars during field trips. One night, she stood by the window until dawn, motionless, feet bare against the floor. No reason given. No awareness of how long she'd been there. High school passed in fragments. Few photos, no clubs, no final dance. Faces around her changed year to year, but hers didn't shift much. Same expression, same quiet refusal. Teachers stopped asking questions after a while. She worked just enough to pass. A neighbor once saw her sitting alone at the park's edge. Not on the benches, far past the treeline, facing a space between branches. No phone, no book, no movement. Just watching something no one else saw. The drawing stayed buried. Not lost, just unremarked. Wedged in paper stacks meant for shredding, forgotten by hands that stopped checking the bottoms of filing drawers. Crayons still visible. Still colored violet where the storm circled one planet too close to collapse. No one remembered it was ever pinned to a wall. No one remembered who had drawn it. Except her. Even if she never said so out loud. Altitude stripped sound from the air. Wind barely touched the domes. Machinery whispered at intervals too faint for human ears. Inside the observatory, monitors blinked without rhythm, throwing reflections across unshaven faces and sleepless eyes. One of the screens had frozen twice that week, not from failure but hesitation. Data flooded faster than interpretation. No alerts. No system errors. Just wait. He leaned forward without blinking, hand near his chin, cursor dragging along orbital telemetry from the prior night's pass. Nothing unusual at first. Just static until frame 17. A shift. Minute. Too subtle for alarms but wrong enough to catch the mind. Bodies shouldn't bend that way. Not this far out. Not under those conditions. He replayed the sequence. Tilted one screen toward the ceiling. Cleaned the lens housing with a rag he never washed. Adjusted coordinates by 2 degrees. Ran it again. Stellar mass consistent with a yellow dwarf. G-type. Quiet. No known irregularities. But something skimmed beneath its light. Barely reflective, yet dense enough to interrupt pull ratios across 3 separate readings. The anomalies didn't spike. They curved. Bent in a rhythm that hinted at organized gravity. That kind of drift doesn't happen in silence. He fed the coordinates into the spectrometer's secondary grid. Sat back. Waited through 3 coffee sips and 1 power surge that blinked the far left strip of lights without explanation. No storms in the region. No faults reported. Results came back with color bands misaligned. Blues sharper than they should be. Atmospheric content flagged high methane, low sodium, patchy ammonia pockets, none of which matched any indexed planetary body. 7 objects confirmed. All orbiting. None on a uniform path. 1 orbited backwards. Charts mapped the region automatically. Simulations spun them into 3 dimensions, then added expected debris rings and axial tilt. Twice the rendering software crashed. Not from load, but structure. Paths overlapped where nothing should remain intact. One planet showed acceleration toward its primary too rapid for surface retention. The software redrew its own map. Each cycle came back with new compensations. Final output showed 7 planetary bodies. 2 with rings. 1 elongated beyond model tolerance. The system shouldn't have held together. Yet it did. He checked the records again. Nothing in the registry. No entries from European or American networks. No flagged discoveries from radio triangulation or deep scan initiative. The location had been logged as background noise. Filtered, ignored, forgotten. He printed the graphs, spread them across the counter, taped one to the back of his tablet. Kept staring at the reversed orbit. The bend of its curve. The lean of the 7th planet, tilted as though something had pulled it sharply in childhood and let go. Weather systems showed wild velocity. One planet's upper layer rotated opposite its core. Another carried a persistent storm with ultraviolet interference strong enough to blind unshielded optic. No satellites detected. No signature fields. Just motion, temperature, and anomaly. This wasn't misreading. Not equipment drift. Not phantom data. This was structured chaos sustained by math he couldn't place. He didn't speak when the assistant entered. Didn't look away when power dimmed again for half a second and came back harder. The star burned clean. The system spun in defiance. And none of it had a name. The article ran without fanfare. Low placement, middle column, no headline bold enough to draw the average eye. Just numbers, simulation stills, a few terms difficult to pronounce and easy to skim past. The kind of discovery that waits patiently in obscurity until someone knows what to look for. He read it in his kitchen, glasses fogged from the kettle he forgot to turn off. Pages curled where steam kissed them. At first, he scanned the diagrams with mild interest. Old habit. Decades of quizzes, science fairs, hand-drawn star charts made from cereal box cardboard. Most of it forgettable. This wasn't. He froze before finishing the second paragraph. Eyes fixed on a single orbit path drawn in red. Too tight. Angled wrong. The tilt curved like a hook. Something in his stomach reacted before thought could catch up. He reached for the bottom drawer beneath stacks of old instruction binders, blew dust from a plastic folder, tugged free a single sheet that had yellowed more than the rest. Crayon marks dulled by time, but shapes still visible. He remembered the paper. He remembered her. At first, he compared casually. A line here, an orbit there. Familiar resemblance. Then he flipped back to the article, lined both side by side, traced one arc with his finger, followed the sharp lean of the fourth orbit, paused at the twin rings around the second planet. Same size. Same distance. Same strange backward path no textbook would have taught. His hand shook before he noticed it. He scanned the scan into his laptop, enlarged both images, overlaid the drawing across the astrophysics model without alignment assistance. Every point landed. Nothing was out of place. Even the storm, marked by violet smudge, matched the atmospheric disturbance recorded on the spectrometer's fourth data pass. He sent the scan without introducing himself. No message. No theory. Just attached the file and entered the subject line. Compare this. No response for 3 days. On the fourth, a single line arrived. Where did this come from? The astronomer didn't speak for 12 minutes. Mouth opened slightly, cursor frozen over the drawing's upper corner. A child's handwriting barely legible. No names. No dates. But the alignment held. Every pass of the model brought it back to the same conclusion. 7 bodies. 2 with rings. 1 moving opposite. Orbital compression too aggressive for survival. Atmospheric noise consistent with observed interference. Axial shifts nearly identical. Crayon-matched simulation. The printout stayed taped beside the monitors for the next 2 months. Not for analysis. Not for evidence. Just to remind them it existed. He kept glancing at the way the child had drawn the smallest planet offset. Not just distance, but timing. That one moved ahead of the rest. Lagged behind. Repeated a pattern no one could describe. No errors in the scan. No mismatches. No logical origin. Just a drawing from years forgotten, redrawn by machines orbiting a mountain half a world away, with sensors she never touched. Nothing explained how she knew. But every line said she had. She'd changed her last name by the time they reached her. 2 counties west, nothing registered in her voice when asked about childhood. No resistance either, just long silences, long enough to suggest calculation, not confusion. The room she lived in held no books, no screens, no decoration. A mattress without a frame, 1 towel, 1 chipped cup. No clock. The power worked, but she rarely used it. The first conversation ended without agreement. Said she didn't remember school. Said drawings weren't hers. claimed no knowledge of planets or data or simulation graph. Her voice didn't quiver. She didn't stammer. But her hands remained folded, tucked too tightly under her sleeves, knuckles pressed white where no one could see them. Medical records had gaps. One pediatrician's notes included sleepwalking episodes beginning at age 6, increasing through 12. Unresponsive states during early morning hours. No seizures. No diagnosis. Dismissed as developmental variants. Another listed chronic epistaxis. Occurred without trauma. Blood dried across cheeks before waking. One scan suggested inflammation behind the eyes, no treatment prescribed. She missed follow-ups. Drawings appeared without memory of making them. Pages left at stairwells, found in bathroom corners, tucked inside cereal boxes. Never colored inside the lines. Shapes repeated. Curves bending the same way, labeled with no language. When asked, she said she hadn't done it. Sometimes cried without knowing why. Once tore a sheet into dozens of pieces, each fragment kept under her pillow. She refused to speak during the second visit. Took the image from the folder without looking at it. Held it for over a minute. Eyes fixed on the floor. Jaw locked. The paper bent under her grip but didn't tear. Her thumb found the ringed planet first. Traced it once. Didn't ask a question. When she finally spoke, it wasn't an answer. Just a number. Not a measurement. Not a date. Just 5 digits, whispered once. Matched the telescope's latest scan coordinates within a half-decimal margin. The man from the observatory didn't press her. Left the image behind. Said nothing as she followed him to the door and locked it before he reached the car. No curtains moved. No sounds followed. 2 days later, a package arrived at the observatory. No return address. No stamp. Just a thin envelope marked in pencil. Inside, 4 drawings. 1 matched the original. 3 were new. The orbital tilt on the smallest planet had changed. Another one showed no rings. Each sheet was covered in identical handwriting. Same pressure, same spacing, same unsighted knowledge. 1 word appeared in the corner of every page. Not English. Not Latin. Not anything the database could translate. She never wrote again. Never answered follow-ups. But the shape of her signature matched a hospital record from 2003. A consent form for a sleep study she never completed. She'd signed it the same way. With a symbol no one had taught her. He brought no assistant, no interpreter, no security detail. Just a laptop wrapped in foam and a folder sealed with tape. The car he rented had a cracked windshield and a heater that never worked past 30 seconds. It didn't matter. He didn't plan to stay long. She opened the door before he knocked. No words. No greeting. No gesture inviting him in. Just moved aside and waited while he stepped across the threshold. Her face held no curiosity. No confusion. He noticed how she stood with her left shoulder against the doorframe, as if bracing for something to give way. The walls inside were bare, but the corners held signs of occupation. A cup left half full near the floor. A sock tucked behind the radiator. He placed the laptop on a stool with a splintered leg and waited for her to sit. She remained standing. He booted the system without speaking. The screen glowed blue, faint hum rising as the simulation initialized. A dark field of stars spread outward. In the center, the yellow star turned slowly, its light caught behind data overlays and measurement rings. The planets emerged one at a time, paths mapped in real time against gravitational models too sensitive to run on older processors. Her eyes didn't move. The second planet flared red along its upper atmosphere. Temperature fluctuations read as too high, inconsistent with stable orbit. He hadn't flagged that data publicly. No one had. Not even his own team had seen the acceleration rate. But before the reading displayed, she pointed at it with her thumb. Lowered her hand. Stepped back. The simulation rotated. Atmospheric distortion pulsed near the 6th planet. Blue and gray swirled around a faint core. Chemical analysis showed ionic imbalance. She whispered something beneath her breath. He didn't catch it. She repeated it louder. Same sound that appeared on the drawings. Not a word, more shape than speech. As if her mouth remembered what her mind refused to hold. He switched views. Focused on the outermost body. The orbital path no longer matched the earliest model. A jag had appeared 3 degrees off-center. He hadn't run correlation yet. She spoke again, quieter this time. Gave him a duration. 4 years, 2 months. He asked what it meant. No reply. He returned to the storm. Asked if she recognized the pattern. Said nothing about the interference it was causing in infrared. She didn't look at the screen. Just recited a sequence of letters and numbers. He checked his notes. It matched the anomaly tag assigned by the mainframe 6 days prior. A code never printed, never shared. He closed the laptop. Silence took the room like fog. Not oppressive, just patient. She sat for the first time. Not across from him. On the floor, knees drawn in. Eyes to the side. He opened the folder. Pulled one sheet. A frame grab from the newest pass. 7 bodies. Each labeled by mass. She didn't glance. Just said one was missing. He asked which. She lifted her hand and tapped the image once. The third from the center. The one no data had yet confirmed. Only gravitational imbalance hinted it had ever been there. No tremor in her voice. No shift in posture. Just a flat acknowledgement, like remembering the name of a street from years ago. She stood before he did. Reached for the envelope on the table without opening it. Handed it over. He never asked what was inside. She never told him. He left before nightfall. The sky behind the hills turned orange, but she didn't watch it. The door locked with a sound too loud for such a quiet place. He drove without headlights for the first mile. When he checked the mirror, her porch light remained off. She had known every storm before it appeared. Had corrected each orbital path before the software could process the mass shift. Had spoken the anomaly code as if she had written it herself. He hadn't asked how. She hadn't offered why. The room they chose held no windows. Soundproofed walls, cold floor, overhead lights set to the lowest setting the equipment would allow. 2 chairs, 1 table, 1 monitor angled toward the glass partition. No clutter. No distractions. She asked for silence. They agreed. Electrodes pressed into the skin at the base of her skull, behind the ears, near the temple. No protest. No flinch. She leaned into the contact as if the sensors might pull something loose. Heart rate slow. Eyes half closed before the session began. No prompt required. No counting down. No guided breathing. Once the machine engaged, her lips parted without tension. Hands curled inward toward her ribs. The voice that came next didn't change tone. No accents. No deviation. Just quiet observation, like reporting rainfall. Dust. Not sand. Not soil. The ground beneath her feet made a hollow scrape when she moved. Not deep. Just enough to remember it wasn't earth. She described weight in her legs. Not fatigue, but difference. Gravity pulling behind her knees instead of down her spine. The sky held no blue. Faded orange near the horizon, thick with motion. Not clouds, she refused to call them that. Described them as shifting veils with no beginning or edge. Light bled through in patches. Something passed overhead but didn't cast shadow. The shapes that moved carried no mass. She said the air tasted like iron. Dry but sharp. Not heat. Not cold. Unnamed temperature that felt thinner when she exhaled. Underfoot, gravel clicked. Not loose pebbles. Smooth, flat black. Each stone the same size, spaced unnaturally. She walked across it toward a ridge. No one told her to move. No voice called her. But her feet kept going. She could see her own arms. Described them smaller than they should have been. Fingers wider. Nails darkened. Skin gray in the dim light. No fear. No resistance. The moon overhead wasn't whole. Color faded to maroon at the edges. One side cracked like dried paint. Not bright enough to reflect. Just hung above her, too low, unmoving. She said it looked tired. A sound came through next. Not from her mouth, from the machine. Frequency spike. Narrow band pulse recorded in the left channel only. Neither the neurologist nor the psychiatrist recognized the pattern. She didn't react to the noise. Kept speaking. Said the ridge ended in a platform. No structure. Just a plane extending over nothing. Beneath it, dark motion. Not liquid. Not gas. Not a vacuum. A presence without shape. She didn't look down. Eyes remained open the entire time. Pupils dilated beyond expected range. Light remained constant. The monitor showed elevated theta activity with bursts in temporal clusters. The kind seen in seizure states, though she displayed no physical symptoms. She lifted her hand midway through the session. Not toward the ceiling or the wall. Straight ahead. As if pointing at something no one else could see. Whispered a name not listed in any known language. Repeated it until the mic caught static that wasn't present in the room's soundscape. She never used the word dream. Never claimed imagination. No story structure. Just observation. Each detail too fixed, too spatially grounded. The kind of recall that bypasses creation and lands squarely in memory. Afterward, her body cooled rapidly. Skin temperature dropped by 3 degrees. No external cause. Her lips turned pale. Refused water. Spoke only once after removal of electrodes. She asked if the smallest planet was still spinning. Not in orbit, spinning. The neurologist recorded no psychological markers of fabrication. No signals consistent with hallucination. Brain activity returned to baseline in under 10 minutes. She left the room without asking for the result. Closed the door behind her, but the sensors registered a charge 3 seconds after she passed. As if the space remembered something she hadn't said aloud. The planet in question had no name. It had only numbers, long strings that changed with every recalculation. Mass fluctuated across simulations. Rotation slipped by degrees. No atmosphere should have remained stable under that speed. No orbit should have sustained cohesion with that proximity to its star. But for 3 weeks, the readings refused to break. Then the signal changed. Radiation levels increased by 4%. Atmospheric density dropped in sudden intervals, too sharp for natural dispersion. Magnetic drift began to register on dual bands. Every model projected collapse within a margin of weeks. Some predicted days. The observatory's internal clock shifted to 20-hour cycles, recalibrated without announcement. No one slept regularly. No one left the upper floors. Meals grew shorter. Conversations dried up into glances and page turns. Updates arrived without context. New data slipped under doors and into inboxes without subject lines. In the midst of this, she began showing up before being asked. One morning she stood outside the data lab before the keycard reader activated. No call, no warning. Arms crossed, face unreadable. They let her in without a word. She watched simulations without reacting. Didn't blink when the outer layers peeled from the collapsing planet in the rendering. Didn't move when the star's surface began to distort under gravitational stress. She whispered that the event had happened before. Not that it would happen. That it already had. Repeated itself on an interval she couldn't define, but felt in her spine. Called it a window. Not an opening. Not a portal. Just a space where alignment returned, where the timing allowed something through. She didn't say what. Her hands trembled only once. Not fear. Not cold. A rhythm, like muscle responding to a signal ahead of understanding. The room where she slept filled with drawings again. Unprompted. Sheets torn from printer trays. Shapes she couldn't have seen. Temperature maps not yet released. Orbital curves altered to match upcoming projections. One showed the collapsing planet shattered, its fragments arcing in slow trails toward the fifth body. None of the models had calculated that outcome. 2 days later, Kovac's team confirmed trajectory shift. She refused to sleep after that. Pacing increased. Food untouched. She began writing on her palms. Characters wiped clean each hour, only to return in the same configuration by nightfall. spoke less. But when she did, her words followed simulation time, not Earth's. She said the light from that system wasn't what it seemed. Claimed it arrived bent, years late, already marked by something finished. Not theoretical. Not guess. Remembered. One night, she stood in the hallway outside the server room and refused to step inside. Said the alignment had already begun. No one understood the phrasing. She offered no correction. She asked for paper and drew 3 lines. First showed the system in current state. Second added a tilt to the 4th orbit. Third erased the collapsing planet entirely. Just a hole circled by debris. On the margin, she wrote a number that matched the timestamp embedded in the next telescope scan before it was processed. She didn't wait for results. Left the room, walked to the far end of the corridor, and sat with her back against the door until morning. The light above her head flicked once, then dimmed. When asked what would happen if the window closed before anyone understood it, she looked at the floor and said nothing. But her eyes moved like she'd already seen it. Not the end. The return. No one asked for it. No one mentioned drawing. The last simulation had just completed its render, the team cross-referencing gravitational field distortions with infrared spread from the 5th body. She wasn't in the control room. No signal, no movement across the hallway cameras. Yet by morning, a page had been slid beneath the office door. Folded once. Thin paper, same kind stocked in the lab printer, but the ink wasn't printed. It was crayon. Pressed hard, dark wax buried into the fibers until the page curled inward from pressure. 6 orbits, not 7. The planet closest to the primary was gone. No remnants. No debris. Just an absence, the orbit line cut short, broken clean through with a graphite line that ended abruptly at the edge of the star's outer limit. The remaining bodies had moved. The 5th was drawn farther out. The 6th, once tilted, had straightened. The rings around the 2nd appeared fragmented, as though caught mid-collapse. Each path altered. Not randomly. Not artistically. Angled in a way that required trigonometric modeling to interpret. But the physics held. 2 members of the team refused to believe it. Accused coincidence. Suggested duplication error from the previous batch. One opened the telescope feed, expecting delay, signal interference, misalignment. What appeared matched her drawing precisely. The missing body had vanished. No radiation plume. No detectable impact. Just orbital vacuum. No force remaining. The simulations recalculated without prompt, shifting each planet into the new arrangement. She did not speak that day. By afternoon, her room sat untouched. Door ajar. Cup of water full beside the bed. Jacket folded on the edge of the desk, one sleeve turned slightly inward as if it had been removed mid-thought. The lights worked. The heater hummed. But no trace remained. Her name no longer registered in the building directory. Swipe card inactive. Cameras showed her passing the corridor at 3:26 in the morning. No exit recorded. No external doors opened. The file containing her medical record corrupted overnight. No backups held the session data. The drawings left behind were missing page numbers. The original, recovered from years ago, still remained, but the child's handwriting had faded to near invisibility, as if age had accelerated in its absence. The simulation continued to track the system for 3 more weeks. No further changes. No anomalies. Each orbit followed the new model exactly. No fluctuations. No collapse. One technician reviewed timestamps from her last visit to the observatory floor. Found she had logged in under no registered name. Accessed no systems. Just stood in the data room for 11 minutes, unmoving, watching the screen loop through celestial rotation. The crayon used in the final drawing contained no pigment registered in standard manufacturing databases. Microscopic analysis showed particles inconsistent with Earth-based composition. Some too fine for natural binding. No one spoke of that again. The drawing remains pinned above the desk in the archive room. The 6th orbit cuts across the screen every 91 seconds. Some believe the window closed when the seventh body vanished. Others aren't sure it ever opened. But the door to her room has never been locked. No one uses it. No one cleans it. And some nights, one of the team swears the cup beside the bed lowers by an inch, drop by drop, without a hand to move it. The room used for archival entries had no label on the door. Located beneath the older wing of the observatory, past 3 sets of badge access and a staircase with uneven risers, the hallway ended in silence. No fans. No windows. The walls pressed closer near the bottom. Files stored here were not indexed by content but by signature, a digital pulse embedded in each document, readable only by a device no longer in production. He placed the folder flat on the steel surface. No ceremony. No commentary. Just 2 sheets inside, sealed between film to prevent air damage. The first showed the original orbits, drawn with crayon that had dulled into near black. The second, newer, less colorful, less curved. More final. A body missing. A balance rewritten. The ink on the final page had begun to fade around the edges, as though reacting to something no one could measure. The database refused to assign a name to either entry. Flagged both as non-reproducible, source ambiguous. They could not be scanned. Could not be duplicated. Attempted copies appeared blank. Even photographed, the result returned pure white. A single note was permitted in the classified log. 1 sentence. No longer than 80 characters. He entered it manually. No one else saw what he typed. The system accepted the file. The drawer closed itself. 3 months passed before the observatory allowed external review. The final telescope model, cleaned of proprietary overlays, passed through a private academic circle. One astrophysicist, checking orbital trajectories, compared the position of the vanished planet to Earth's rotational alignment across historical intervals. Not proximity, not magnitude, alignment. 30 years earlier, to the day, the orbital curve of the missing body had passed through a vector that intersected Earth's own axial drift. Not visually, not gravitationally, just mathematically. For 1 fraction of 1 second they had matched. No alert was raised. No publication followed. The calculation was redacted from the review. The original drawings remain untouched. The archive remains locked. The room above it, where the systems first displayed the model, was repurposed into storage. But one monitor was never removed. It runs without input, screen dimmed but alive. Every 79 seconds it refreshes. A faint orbit appears, flickers once, and disappears. The janitor tasked with sweeping the hallway said the lights above that door hum louder than the rest. No one asked him how he knew that. The badge that once allowed her entry was never deactivated. It doesn't show up on scans. Doesn't respond to reset. But every 30 days, the system registers one phantom swipe at the archive entrance. No access is granted. No footage is recorded. Only the lock disengages, waits 7 seconds, and re-engages again. Thank you for watching and sticking with me to the end. Now, if you believe humanity deserves a future among the stars, do subscribe now. Only those who'd abandon Earth to its fate will scroll past.